behind the story of this Elvis Presley controversy, whether he's alive or dead. Our next guest is Kelly Burgess. Kelly, well, you've got quite a background. Detroit News, and tell us something about yourself.
Well, for 10 years I was an editorial assistant, feature writer, and sometimes columnist on the staff of the Detroit News.
And there came a time when you left Detroit News. And
Yeah, I left the Detroit News last year, and since then I've been writing for national magazines.
you have an article out now, right?
Right, I have an article in this month's issue of Skin Diver magazine.
Now, I understand that you actually talked to Elvis. This is great. Tell us about it. How did you ever even think of trying to find him? Where did you find him? Well, let's start with how did you get there? Take your little trip that you took me on today. It was interesting.
Okay. First of all, unfortunately, I was never an Elvis fan. I never had the opportunity to see a concert. I never owned a record. And when he died, I felt very bad, but it just kind of passed, and I never gave it a second thought until this summer. I don't know if any of you had access to the Michigan newspapers. There were several sightings of him in Michigan, and that's where I'm from, Troy, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. And about the same time, I read Gail Giorgio's book, Is Elvis Alive? And I became quite intrigued by the research that she had uncovered. And then the more I read about the sightings in Kalamazoo, Michigan, it was a challenge. As a reporter, it was a challenge to me. So one day around the first week in August, I told my 22-year-old son, I said, let's go to Kalamazoo today. I went totally expecting to find nothing. I had heard about the look-alike. And when we arrived in Kalamazoo, I went to the Burger King, to the YMCA.
Hold on. Tell everybody what happened at the YMCA. That we can't let that get by. Come on.
I went into the YMCA and spoke to the director of the fitness center. And I said, does Elvis Presley work out here? And he said, just a minute, I'll have to check the roster.
I think that's great. Really
Which he did.
Nonchalant as can be.
He came back and he said, no, Elvis Presley does not work out here.
Go ahead.
So let me tell you first, there is a look-alike running around Kalamazoo creating an uproar. And many people have seen him. He hangs around the Burger King. He goes into the supermarkets. He could be spotted driving the car. I've even heard that he throws parties and invites people and hands out T-shirts. That is not Elvis Presley.
Where'd you find Elvis Presley?
I went to an old hotel in Kalamazoo. It's on the main street. Now, Kalamazoo is a small college town, very antiquated buildings. So I went to this hotel, which was built in the 1890s. There is a renovation underway there now, and it's being converted from an old hotel into an office complex. 3 gentlemen bought the hotel in 1985.
Where did you find Elvis? Where did you
want
find
to hear
Elvis? Let's get to Elvis.
Do you want to hear the details? You want to hear the mystery behind
maybe we
it?
can go back after. Well, where did you find Elvis? That's what I want to know.
I have to tell you the details first.
You have to, huh?
Right.
You're going to take me on this little trip, but I'm anxious. I want to know where you found Elvis. I think that's it. Okay.
All right, I went into the building with my son.
Yes.
We started surveying. There's a five-story building with an atrium elevator. I started surveying every floor. And I had 3 encounters with security guards.
Where did you find him? No, I'm like, go ahead, tell us more.
Okay, I was not intimidated by the guards. I mean, they practically told me to leave the building. They said, you're not allowed in here. So then my next step was to go into some of the offices. There are several tenants doing business in that building. I went into the offices. I went into 4 offices asking for Elvis Presley or John Burroughs. They all looked at me quite incredible. I mean, these business people, and I'm asking for Elvis Presley. And at one point, some of the people said, well, Elvis is not here, but we've seen his illegitimate son, Elvis Presley Jr., which later turned out to be a joke. So the last office I went into was on the off the main floor in the lobby. And I spoke to the receptionist and asked the same question. And she said, just a moment, I'll get my manager. So the manager came out, and I was speaking to him about Elvis, and he seemed quite interested and asked my reason for being there. We had talked about 5 minutes, and I had my back to the office door, and he said, suddenly, he said, there's the man you want to see. I turned around, and it was Elvis was standing there, and it was almost I felt as if lightning had struck in the room.
You're there.
It happened.
It's Elvis. Tell us about it. That's what happened then.
His presence was overwhelming, and my son was standing there also, and he felt it too, he later told me. Now, mind you, I've been a reporter. I have seen and worked on all kinds of stories, incredible stories. But for the first time in my life, I was stunned. I did not know what to say. He took his finger like this, and he motioned for me to come out into the lobby. And I followed him out there. And he leaned against the balcony, and he started shaking his finger at me like this, and he said, "What are you doing in this building bothering the tenants? I will not have this." He was very angry, very. And I said, well, I'm with the Detroit News and I'm doing a story on Elvis. I do not care if you're with the Detroit Star. I will not have this. And in the next moment, his mood changed entirely. He was very kind. I feel that he did not feel threatened by me. And I was not aggressive. So I started talking to him, and he did not say a word. For about 5 minutes, I asked him, I said, well, you know, I started outlining some of the facts in Giorgio's book. I said, if Elvis is dead, I said, why did no one collect his life insurance? I said, why did Vernon not accept the American flag for his coffin? And he stood there and he listened. He did not say one word. And at one point, I've turned around. I was standing kind of on an angle. I turned around and I looked directly into his eyes. He had on gold-rimmed glasses, a very modified version of what he used to wear. And they were with a slight tint to him. But I looked in his eyes. I mean, he had the Elvis Presley expression in his eyes, which I think most people that knew him are familiar with. I mean, that kind of sparkle. Same shape eyes, same color eyes. And I was stunned. I mean, it was shining through what comes through all of us, that this is me. It's kind of your soul that shines through your eyes. And I said, you have eyes just like Elvis. I said, are you a relative? He said, nope. See, for some reason, and today I still don't know, I did not let him know that I thought he was Elvis. And I still don't know why I didn't come out and ask him. Then, after he listened to my questions and just stood there kind of with a very pleasant look on his face, kind of half smiling at times. And just before I walked away, he said, yeah, but it's against the law to hoax your death. And I left the building.
What?
But then I returned. Should I talk about that? When I returned?
What did you return for?
To take a picture and...
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Can you believe what you've heard so far? Well, that's